Welcome to From Paper to People. We're the show that really digs into the research, the articles, all that complex stuff, and tries to pull out what you really need to know.
Yeah, we try to connect those academic dots to, what's actually happening out there.
Exactly. And today, we're diving deep into something that seems almost, well, trivial at first glance, the necktie in American politics.
Right, the simple necktie. It sounds like such a minor detail, doesn't it?
It really does. But we've got a stack of research here suggesting it's surprisingly significant.
Oh, absolutely. In the world of presidents and candidates, that choice of tie color, it's almost never just random. It's it's a real piece of their communication strategy.
A communication strategy, how so?
Well, it's about visual messaging.
Yeah.
It helps reinforce what they're saying, signals who they are, or maybe who they want you to think they are. It can subtly shape how people see them.
Okay, so it's like a shortcut to their political brand.
Kind of, yeah. It's a visual cue in the whole branding package.
So let's get into it. We see presidents wearing ties all the time. Red and blue seem to be the main ones, right?
They really dominate, yes.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What does the research, the psychology, tell us about these colors? Let's start with red. That's often called the power tie, isn't it?
It is, and there's a lot of psychology behind that. Red is consistently linked with, well, power, passion, even a sense of urgency. It just grabs your attention.
Grabs attention, okay.
Yeah, and studies have shown this. Like experiments where people rate men wearing red.
Mm-hmm.
They often see them as more dominant, maybe even a bit more aggressive.
Interesting. So it's not just a cultural thing.
It seems to tap into something deeper. You even see links between red and dominance in, like, nature and sports.
Hmm.
That perception carries over to how we see people dressed.
So a politician puts on a red tie.
And it immediately sends a signal.
Mm.
Energy, strength, decisiveness. It sort of dials up alertness in the viewer, maybe tapping into those primal associations with warning signs or, high status.
Hence the power tie.
Exactly. It projects authority, vigor, and a practical point for TV. Sometimes a bright color like red can actually make someone look a bit more energetic, add some color to their face under those bright lights.
Right, okay, so that's red covered. Power, energy, grabbing attention. What about blue? It feels like the complete opposite sometimes.
And in many ways it is. Blue generally signals things like stability, calm, trustworthiness. Think navy blue, sky
Yeah,
blue.
you feel very official, reliable.
Precisely. Reliability, integrity. People associate blue with calming things, like the sky or the ocean. It creates a feeling of security, which is, pretty useful if you're a leader trying to inspire confidence.
Is there a cognitive effect too?
There's some research suggesting that, yeah, blue might encourage more open, creative thinking, whereas red, as we said, heightens attention to detail, maybe even gets the heart rate up a tiny bit.
So blue is about reassurance then, making people feel safe.
That's a good way to put it. It signals a steady hand, a measured approach. It's the color of maybe consensus building, competence. It feels safe, invites cooperation.
Makes a candidate look sincere, perhaps.
Steady and sincere, exactly. Offers that visual promise of calm. Now, obviously, these meanings are shaped by culture, but they also seem rooted in some pretty basic psychological responses.
And politicians know this.
Oh, absolutely. They leverage these emotional cues deliberately. You might see red for a fiery speech, wanting to project passion.
And blue for something more serious?
Right, like a somber address or a call for unity, trying to put people at ease, project dependability.
Okay, so that's the psychology. Moving from the general theory, how does this actually play out? How do presidents, candidates use these colors day to day? It must be more than just personal taste.
Oh, it's completely strategic. For male politicians especially, the tie is often the only real splash of color they can easily change with a standard suit. So it becomes this really potent little messaging tool.
A small space with big impact.
You got it. So presidents might pick red when they want to project strength, maybe announce a victory, rally the base. It signals excitement, resolve.
And blue for the opposite.
Yeah, for those quieter, more serious moments. A memorial service, a speech calling for bipartisanship. They'll go for a dignified blue to signal seriousness, stability.
So red for intensity, blue for dependability.
That's a neat summary, yeah. Passion versus sober reliability.
But it's not just about the mood, is it? In the U.S., these colors have taken on huge partisan meanings, too.
Oh, massively. Red is the Republican color now, and blue is the Democratic color.
Yeah.
That's become really ingrained, especially since the 2000 election maps.
Right, so wearing your party's color is like wearing the team jersey.
Pretty much. A Republican in a red tie at a convention, or a Democrat in a blue one.
Yeah.
It reinforces that tribal identity, that affiliation.
But sometimes they switch it up. You mentioned color flipping.
Yes, that's where it gets really interesting tactically. Remember the 2016 debates?
Yeah.
Donald Trump, the Republican, often wore blue ties. And Hillary Clinton, the Democrat, wore those striking red pantsuits.
I do remember that. What was the thinking there?
Well, it could be a few things. Maybe trying to look more magnanimous, appealing beyond their base, or simply grabbing attention by doing the unexpected. It could be a subtle way to signal, I'm willing to reach across the aisle, or just project a broader sense of appeal.
And sometimes they try to blend the two. You see purple ties occasionally.
Exactly. Purple, being the mix of red and blue, is sometimes used deliberately to symbolize unity or bipartisanship.
Any specific examples?
The most famous one is probably President Obama's 2011 State of the Union address. He wore a lavender purple tie.
Ah, I remember the commentary around that.
Right. It was widely seen as this visual gesture saying, let's rise above the partisan fighting. Plus, purple has these historical links to royalty, nobility. It adds a touch of gravitas. It was a very conscious choice.
So beyond single events, do presidents develop a sort of tie brand over time, a signature look?
Definitely. Some become really known for their tie choices. Donald Trump is probably the most obvious recent example.
Of long red tie.
The long, bright red tie, yeah.
Yeah.
It became his absolute uniform. Dark suit, white shirt, that vivid red tie. And that wasn't by accident. It was all about projecting bold authority, dominance, maybe that confrontational energy that defined his style.
The tie became shorthand for the persona.
Absolutely. Although, interestingly, his very first official White House portrait in 2017, he wore a blue tie.
Oh, really? Why do you think?
Maybe an initial attempt to reassure, project a bit more calm after a divisive election. But he quickly went back to the signature red for most appearances and later portraits. It clearly fit the tougher image he wanted to cultivate.
And President Biden, he seems to have gone the other way.
He really has. Biden leaned heavily into blue ties, especially during the campaign and early presidency. Lots of shades of blue.
As a contrast to Trump.
A very clear, very deliberate contrast, yes. It reinforced his whole message of restoring calm, being a steady, trustworthy hand. Biden blue became its own kind of brand, reliable calm.
Does he ever wear red?
Occasionally, yes. Maybe for a more forceful moment, like celebrating a big legislative win or something. But blue is definitely his default, his brand anchor.
What about Obama? He seemed to mix it up more.
He did. Obama was quite strategic, balancing tradition with messaging. As a Democrat, blue was common for trust and calm. But he used red quite a lot too, especially early on, for major speeches or press conferences, projecting confidence and vigor.
So choosing the color for the moment.
Exactly. He was pretty adept at matching the tie to the desired mood. And then, of course, there was that purple tie moment we mentioned, showing that specific strategic use, too.
And it's not always just the president alone, is it? Sometimes you see coordination.
That happens, too, yeah. Like a nonverbal signal for the whole team. You mentioned Trump's first address to Congress in 2017, he wore blue, but so did Vice President Pence and Speaker Ryan sitting behind him.
Creating a unified visual.
Right, a picture of calm unity. Or think about inaugurations. Sometimes you see the incoming president and VP deliberately alternating red and blue ties over the events, making sure both patriotic colors are displayed.
Like Obama and Biden did.
Exactly. And more recently, in 2022, after the invasion of Ukraine, President Biden and many lawmakers wore blue and yellow ties or pins the colors of the Ukrainian flag as a clear sign of support.
So the tie becomes a kind of flag itself sometimes.
In a way, yes. A small but visible signal.
Okay, so we've established politicians definitely use these colors strategically. We see the patterns. But here's the big question. Does it actually work? How much does this really influence us, the voters, the audience? Or is it just, smart consultants overthinking things?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the academic research actually offers a more, let's say, nuanced answer. There's some real skepticism about its direct impact.
Skepticism, how so?
Well, there was this really neat study back in 2016 by a psychologist named Robin Kramer. It was published in Evolutionary Psychology.
Okay, what did Kramer do?
They took videos of Barack Obama giving a speech, identical videos. But using digital editing, they changed the color of his tie. In one version, it was red, and the other was blue. Everything else was exactly the same.
And they showed these to people.
Right. And they asked viewers to rate Obama on things like leadership, dominance, credibility. The question was, does just the tie color change how people perceive him?
And the results. Did the power tie make him seem more powerful?
Surprisingly, no. The study found that viewers' ratings didn't really differ significantly whether he was wearing the red tie or the blue tie. They ran similar tests with other politicians, too, and got similar null results.
Wow. So the power tie might be a myth.
Kramer basically concluded that, yeah, in terms of directly influencing opinions just by itself, the red power tie idea might be more myth than reality.
Huh. That's fascinating, especially given how much thought clearly goes into these choices by campaign. So how do we square that? If the research says it doesn't really work, why do they keep doing it? What's the actual value?
That's the key point. We need to reconcile the finding with the practice. And the thinking is this. The tie color isn't working in isolation. It's just one small piece of a much bigger picture.
Okay, so context matters.
Hugely. Think about everything else that's going on when you watch a politician. Their facial expressions, their tone of voice, the words they're actually saying, the backdrop, the event. A single bit of color at their neck might just be too subtle to overpower everything else.
It doesn't change minds on its own.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But, and this is important, it likely contributes to the overall impression. It reinforces the intended message. A red tie won't magically make a hesitant speaker seem dominant.
But if they're already trying to project dominance,
Then the red tie complements that. It fits the picture. It makes the message feel more coherent. Same with blue. It reinforces a message of calm stability if the delivery matches.
so it's about consistency, making the visual match the verbal.
Exactly. Congruence. Campaign strategists believe these details add up over time to build a consistent image. And we as viewers do notice consistency, or when something feels off. Like if a politician known for being aggressive suddenly wore, I don't know, a soft pastel tie, it would feel jarring, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So Trump's relentless red or Biden's steady blue, that consistency, helps build a recognizable brand. And there's other research that supports this idea of clothing color interacting with messages, like studies showing clothing color can soften or intensify reactions to aggressive language, or that seeing messages framed in party colors can trigger partisan bias, even if policy itself matters more.
So it's not a magic bullet, but it's a piece of the communication puzzle.
Precisely. A contributing thread in the overall fabric of political image making.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. If we were to summarize the key symbolism.
I'd say, broadly, red signals energy, urgency, strength, passion. Blue conveys trust, unity, steadiness, calm, reliability. Purple is that deliberate blend, usually aiming for unity, bipartisanship, maybe a touch of gravitas. These choices aren't random. They're there to help build a narrative, shape a persona.
It really shows how, in the sort of theater of politics, every detail of appearance can become part of the communication. Tie colors are like this nonverbal language.
That's a great way to put it.
And even if the research says, a red tie alone won't win an election, it's clear that presidents and their teams believe these signals matter. They use them to reinforce their message, set the tone, connect emotionally.
It's all part of crafting that overall image, trying to resonate with voters on multiple levels, sometimes even subconsciously.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is this. Next time you're watching a presidential debate or a big speech, take a look at the tie. What color is it?
And ask yourself,
Yeah.
beyond the words being spoken, what message might that color be trying to send? What feeling is it trying to evoke?
It adds another layer to watching politics, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on From Paper to People. We hope this gave you some interesting insights connecting research to the real world.
Join us next time for more explorations into how academic knowledge helps us understand the world around us.